What is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is the first decentralized digital currency. Bitcoins are digital coins you can send through the internet. Compared to other alternatives, Bitcoins have a number of advantages. Bitcoins are transferred directly from person to person via the net, without going through a bank or clearinghouse. This means that the fees are much lower, you can use them in every country, your account cannot be frozen, and there are no prerequisites or arbitrary limits. Let's look at how it works. Bitcoins are generated all over the internet by anybody running a free application called a Bitcoin miner. Mining requires a certain amount of work for each block of coins. This amount is automatically adjusted by the network such that Bitcoins are always created at a predictable and limited rate. Your Bitcoins are stored in your digital wallet, which might look familiar if you use online banking. When you transfer Bitcoins, an electronic signature is added. After a few minutes, the transaction is verified by a miner and permanently and anonymously stored in the network. The Bitcoin software is completely open source and anybody can review the code. Bitcoin is changing finance the same way the web changed publishing. When everyone has access to a global market, great ideas flourish. Let's look at some examples of how Bitcoins are already used today. You can purchase video games, gifts, books, servers, and alpaca socks. Several currency exchanges exist where you can trade your Bitcoins for dollars, euros, and more. Bitcoins are a great way for small businesses and freelancers to get noticed. It doesn't cost anything to start accepting them, there are no chargebacks or fees, and you'll get additional business from the Bitcoin economy.
Imagine, right now, in one instant, the money in your wallet, checking, or investment accounts could purchase only 1/10 or 1/100th of what it could yesterday. How would your life be affected? Could this even realistically happen? Well, who is in control of your money and how the US dollar works? Not you. Did you decide in 2008 to help bail out large failing banks? Probably not. But your government did. Did you notice how prices rose for gas and food after this? Our crisis was witnessed by the world, by our creditors. Yet our government borrowed more money and the Federal Reserve printed more dollars. All of these events changed the value of each dollar you have. At any moment, another event could happen that changes the value of these dollars more dramatically. So how can you protect yourself? You may have been told to store wealth in real estate or gold and silver. These are good places to store wealth, but you cannot buy groceries or goods directly with these assets because they aren't currency. You can't transfer their value easily or efficiently for real-world transactions. There is a form of currency that does not deal in dollars, and that is actually inflation-proof. It is the banker's worst fear.
Why is gasoline so expensive?
Telling us which food brands are ready for the uptick in costs.
The United States has just lost its top-notch AAA credit rating.
18 people have been charged in what may be one of the nation's largest credit card fraud rings.
What some are calling fool's gold, it is the virtual currency called
It is a kind of holy grail of payments. We're asking whether or not this currency really has any longevity, let alone legitimacy.
How can I hedge against inflation and other government manipulation? One thing I did was to buy Bitcoin. What are they?
I don't really know that much about Bitcoin.
Bitcoin is a purely online currency with no intrinsic value.
It is digital currency, which you can then use to buy things online.
Bitcoin.
What is Bitcoin?
Bitcoin, first introduced in 2009, is a relatively new technology in today's ever-changing world. Bitcoin is a digital currency, an innovative tool that is revolutionizing people's daily lives, as did smartphones, eBay, YouTube, and even the internet itself.
I can communicate with people live anywhere in the world by typing on the keyboard.
You've got mail.
The Bitcoin network facilitates the instantaneous transfer of value across any distance over any borders, to any place on Earth. Specifically, it allows any person in any place with an internet connection to receive and transfer value. To send $8,000 from America to Australia, Western Union would charge you $336. In contrast, any value of Bitcoin can be transferred with a fee of no more than 2 cents at today's exchange rate. Besides being able to transfer wealth instantly, Bitcoin is highly valuable because in its specially designed software, the supply of currency units, also called Bitcoins, is increased at a steady rate. New Bitcoin creation will only cease in the year 2140 with a total of 21 million Bitcoins. As of September 2013, there exist in circulation over 11.5 million bitcoins, over half the total supply that will eventually be mined. Mining Bitcoin is the process by which new bitcoins come into existence. They are created in blocks, and currently 25 bitcoins are mined per block. Blocks are generated about every 10 minutes as regulated by the software code and sent to the computer that mined them. The best miner is the one with the most computational power, but it is also based on luck who wins the reward. A rough estimate would put the total number of Bitcoin miners at 100,000. It may be hard to trust such a new, strange, and exciting system like Bitcoin. Some, mainly computer technology enthusiasts, already see Bitcoin as more secure than email, online banking, and your E-Trade account. Like email, a person would not normally assume anyone in this case can see, delete, or otherwise access their email account without their permission and password. There is one exception in that your email provider could shut you down or even spy on you at the NSA's request. This brings us to the topic of centralization. Bitcoin is decentralized. This means there is no central authority that can stop any specific Bitcoin transaction, and the same goes for the Bitcoin system as a whole. No one can lock or freeze a Bitcoin wallet or address, unlike a bank account. No one can arbitrarily create more Bitcoins than the software program was designed to make. No one can change the software without the majority of the entire network of users accepting a change. Programmers of the Bitcoin software are thus limited in their scope of changes to what the market is driving.
Bitcoin. Now, as the price of the cryptocurrency vaults higher and higher, a lot of people are beginning to take notice. And is Bitcoin a bubble about to crash, or is it even a currency at all? Here to break down the bits and give us his forecast of where the world of technology is heading is Reggie Middleton, independent investor and financial blogger. Welcome, Reggie. It's very good to have you here today.
Thank you very much.
Now,
it's wonderful to be here.
Now, I want to start off about talking about Bitcoin. It's been all the rage as of late, and it has fans and it has critics. You happen to be a fan. So my question, why so bullish on Bitcoin, Reggie?
Okay, I'm more of a student. I don't know if you call it a fan. I'm a student that is most interested in the technology because the technology enables things to be done that haven't been able to be done before. I equivocate Bitcoin to the internet in the early 90s. It was a curiosity. A lot of people thought it was a nerd fad. And right now, most people couldn't survive or continue their day-to-day activities without the internet. Bitcoin is severely misunderstood. Bitcoin should be bifurcated and thought of as two parts. Bitcoin with a lowercase b, which is a digital currency based on cryptographic methods and cryptography, and Bitcoin with a capital B, which is a protocol and a network based upon that protocol of which that currency is able to travel. So you have two parts to Bitcoin. Almost all the attention, the media attention, and investor and speculator attention is focused on Bitcoin with a lowercase b, the digital currency, which is very interesting, especially considering, it has a meteoric rise, 60,000% returns, etc. But what is of real interest is the protocol that Bitcoin travels along in the network. That allows you to do things such as program the money and make smart money, as compared to most fiat currency, which I consider dumb. Let's pick the most famous one, the US dollar. The dollar is a dumb currency. I take a dollar bill, I give it to you. Once I give it to you, that's pretty much the end of the story. I pay you for a service or a product. If I don't like this service or product and I want the dollar back, I can ask you for it. If you don't agree, we fight in court, arbitration, etc. With Bitcoin, you could program that currency. So I can actually give it to you, but you can't spend it until our preconceived contract or agreement is fulfilled by both of us. So if we both don't agree that the reason I gave you that money is valid, then that money can't be spent. So we can actually program to do that, which is very simple, or many more complicated things. And a good analogy would be a car. To determine if a car is overpriced, you look at it and look at its historical prices and what other cars are selling for. So you have a Mercedes that's selling for, say, $90,000. And then I have this car, let's say it's a Wrestler, not a Tesla, but a Wrestler. Computerized car, nobody's heard of it. Last year it was selling for $20,000. This year it's selling for $1.2 million. Okay, is that car overpriced? Is it a Ponzi? Is it a bubble? Well, looking at just the car, it definitely looks like it's a bubble. But if we think about this car that comes complete with its own roads, and this car's roads can travel anywhere in the world where there's an internet connection, not just over the country, from state to state, but throughout the U.S., but over the oceans and over the seas, into Europe, into Asia, into Africa. And not only can it do that, it doesn't have to pay any tolls at all. It goes with all bridges and tolls, toll-free.
Right.
And it travels faster than any other car. And you don't have to pay any gas. It powers itself fuel-free.
Now, Reggie,
looking at it from that perspective,
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I want to get to some of the technology questions too, and I have one more about Bitcoin that I really want to address. Now, some believe that Bitcoin is intended to damage central banking systems and that it pushes a blatant libertarian political agenda by hindering states' ability to collect taxes. Do you believe this to be true?
Well, I have actually no idea what it was intended to be because I haven't interviewed the originators of Bitcoin. But if you take my internet analogy, that's like saying the internet was intended to damage or to take down the media companies. And if the media companies have been damaged, that's because they did not embrace the technology early on and learn to adapt it to their business model, adapt their business model to it. So if the central banking system will be damaged, it's because the central banking system did not move along with the technology, but instead decided to fight it. I don't believe Bitcoin may fall, but I don't believe the technology of digital currencies are a fad. I think it's here to stay.
Right.
So in order for the banking system, both commercial, private, and the central banking system to succeed and benefit, you have to change the way you do business and the business model. If you don't, then there's a good chance that the digital currencies will take down the central banking system.
Right.
But I think that would be much more the central banking system's fault than a conspiracy of the people who created Bitcoin to take out the central banking system.
So maybe the central banking system can learn a little something from the music industry and get on board before they're out of business.
Controversy and uncertainty the world over. Could Bitcoin be the death of the dollar? Former U.S. Congressman and presidential candidate Ron Paul is here with his take in a first on Fox Business interview. It is great to have you back on the show, Congressman. What do you think of Bitcoin?
Well, I think it's a mystery to a lot of people, and there's a lot of mystery associated with it that it's to me as well, because I can't quite describe to you exactly what a Bitcoin looks like or what it's all about. But it's an interesting phenomenon, and it's very attractive to the libertarians because it sort of fits this category of competing currencies. But, you know, if we have a replacement for the dollar, it'll be because somebody at the Federal Reserve destroyed the value of the dollar, and therefore something has to take its place. And, you know, if you look at the last 100 years, the Fed's been working on it.
Yeah.
About 98% of the value of the dollar is gone.
Especially lately, they've been working really hard on it. You were quoted as saying that you thought that Bitcoin could be the destroyer of the dollar. Did you say that? What did you mean by that?
Well, I think there was a little bit lost in the translation there because there was a lot of ifs, ands, and buts and maybes in there. But if the dollar goes down, if the Fed really causes a panic out of the dollar, which we had in 1979, but it required interest rates up to 21% to save the dollar. But if you have a rush out of the dollar, which I anticipate will happen, to what degree and what will happen, we don't know.
Yeah.
But if Bitcoin is out there and gold is out there, it can be a participant in bringing down the dollar. You know, there will be a momentum in a certain direction. So, but we don't even know about Bitcoin. That doesn't have a very long history. I like the history of gold, of course, because it's a little bit longer. But if the Bitcoin fits the bill and there's no fraud involved, I think, yes, it can be a participant, and there'll be other currencies similar to this, I think, as time goes on. Well, the thing that surprised me the most was the sort of the acceptance by Bernanke, not saying, you know, that this was a terrible thing. He was saying, oh, this sounds pretty good. We have to consider this as a possibility. He was much more adamant when I asked him about gold. He said, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Gold is not money, but maybe Bitcoin is. And I just wonder whether it is less threatening to the central bank, and that makes me think about what's going on with Bitcoin.
Do you think it's really less threatening, Bitcoin, though? Because, I mean, what's really interesting about it is that the government has control more or less over the dollar. I mean, like you're saying, they could lose control through their own actions, but for now, you know, they're trying to manage the value. They seem to have no control over Bitcoin so far, and I can't imagine they're going to let it remain that way.
Yeah, and that's why, you know, governments are notorious in demanding total monopoly over money and credit. So that it raises a lot of questions on what's going on here. We do know that these blockchains that are recorded tell us where this money goes and how much money it is. And the feds didn't have any trouble tracking down the drug dealers that were dealing in Bitcoin. So I think there's a lot to be learned about this.